All right, good to go, Bruce.
All right, call the meeting to order at 4:30. Everyone rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Alicia, can you take a roll call, please?
I can. Steve Degala,
Here.
Corey Miller,
Here.
Ian McDonald. I don't think he's on yet. Lori Blargen. Here. Bruce Blargen.
Here.
Danny Erickson. Here. Matt Fugall.
Here.
Okay, district commission's on there. I'll take approval for the agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. All right, all those in favor, or any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, motion passes 6-0. Any public comment?
I received none.
Okay.
No,
All right, then we'll go into item 3, items for discussion, possible action for approval for the 25-26 preliminary budget. That we all were emailed, so.
Yep, so yeah, I'll start it off and then I'm gonna turn it over to Rod. So you probably all heard about the hardest working man in show business. Rod is the hardest working man in school finance. He's done a ton to get us to this point. We were a little bit behind the 8 ball in getting ready, but he's put a ton of work in, so big thanks to Rod to get us where we are. So the purpose of this process is to have the board approve a preliminary budget that would then be posted and then discussed and ultimately acted on at the annual meeting in the budget hearing. And then the next step in that process would be for the entire board to then act on the official budget in October. So there's several steps to this. This is the first step where we put out a preliminary budget. I want to give some background to the budget, how it's structured, and why it is what it is before we get into the specifics. So first of all, this budget is based on overall revenue limits, meaning what are we allowed to use to finance the school. That's a balance of several sources, but we're going to talk about 3 primarily. So if we think about federal sources, state sources, and local sources. We're going to set federal aside, not that it's not important, but it's not a huge part of that pie. So if we think about state and local sources, that's where the revenue limit comes in, those 2 pots of money. And every district has different percentages, and those percentages can shift in terms of the amount that comes from state sources, the amount that comes from local sources. But in all, the formula provides us with what is called that revenue limit. So this budget does have that maxed as we have for several years. So I want to be clear about that. And that doesn't mean that that's where it needs to be. That's just where we are for a starting point for discussion. You'll notice that there is a slight surplus on the budget. Rod's going to talk a little bit about where that surplus came from, but then some of the parts of the budget that aren't yet accounted for, mainly steps and lanes. So we'll get into that as well tonight. The overall revenue year over year shows a 1.88% increase. That's all in though. It does lean much heavier on local taxpayers in this budget. That's not a great thing. You know, we'd rather that not be the case, but that is the formula. That's what happens. So we're looking at a change in just local levy of 10.11%. Rod will get into what that would look like for mill rate. And again, that's just where we're starting with this conversation. The surplus of the $241,000, that's not typical that we would go in with a surplus budget, but again, there's still some work that needs to be done. We are against a timeline to get this posted and get everything set, so we wanted to get at least a starting point for our conversation tonight. Ultimately, it's up to the board to decide what that levy would look like, or the preliminary budget, what that would look like. Given where we are and some of the challenges we have ahead of us, it is our recommendation that we would levy that total amount. However, not with the surplus ultimately. We'd like to have that allocated to a few areas of concern. So that's big picture of where we are. I'm not sure if we want to go right into questions, or Rod, if you want to present a little bit, maybe, I think probably best if Rod presents a little bit about the process, what he's gone through to get us here, and then we can get into questions.
So if you kind of look at the middle column of the budget summary, that's our unaudited financial numbers for last school year. Those aren't finalized yet. We're still working on those with our auditors to finalize everything. So there's still some adjustments that are going to come in. We still have some expenses that are being paid out of 24, 25. Those should be wrapping up pretty quickly. So these numbers are going to change a little bit. But to build the 25, 26 budget, I took our actual expenses, actual revenues from last year, and I added 3% to most of the expenses that we had last year. And then I looked at some of the expenses that we know exactly what they're gonna be. For instance, health insurance, we know it was gonna increase by 3.9%. So all the accounts that are affected by health insurance, I increased those by 3.9. Like snow plowing come in last year was very minimal. I bumped that up a little bit. Assuming we're gonna have more in snow than we did last year. A couple other expenses that we know of is the casualty insurance went up by 10,000, so I adjusted that on this budget as well. I think that's about the main things that I touched. Oh, it looks like the janitorial contract we know went up a little bit. That was the kind of question that came up. So we adjusted for that amount. And I think, looking at my list here, that's the main things that I covered. I also met with Baird, and they helped build this budget summary. He took a real close look at it. He was able to determine pretty closely what we think our revenues are gonna be. And he liked where a lot of the expenses were looking, so we went with his analysis and built this summary right here. Last year, we were projected to have a mill rate of 6.68. I think it's gonna come in a little bit lower, actually, at the end of the year. And this new budget's gonna bring us in right around $7.11. So it is a big jump, but it's still lower than where we have been the last 12 years, other than the 24-25 school year. And that 711 brings us in right around the state average of 709. So I think we're still in a good place with that.
And you're saying that's, sorry, you
No,
won't.
go ahead.
But you're saying that's because we have to offset with, because of the state funding that's going down? Is that-
Yeah, that's the big reason for it.
I have a question. Why is it going down?
The state funding?
Yeah. Besides what well, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
But is it tied to enrollment? No.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is tied to enrollment, both state and local, but the formula, the last biennium budget had no increase, and everything's becoming more expensive. So as inflation goes up, they've been flat, the state has been flat, so it does put more pressure on local taxpayers. There's often, people talk about the state funding formula is broken. It's not really broken, it's doing exactly what it's designed to do, which was put more of the onus on the local taxpayer. That's why you see way more districts going to referendum than ever have before, especially on the operational side. There was an era where you didn't see all that much operational referenda, you would only see the capital. Now, I think it's 80% of the districts, we're one of them, is operating under an operational. We had that $1 million operational a few years back. But as Rod said, historically, if we look back, like we go back to 2016, our mill rate was 1064. Then it went in the 9s up until 2020, dropped down to 880 in 2021, and then 827, 791, 721, and then that 670. So the mill rate has been steadily decreasing, meaning the tax burden is actually decreased for local taxpayers. This brings us back up, but not even as high as it was the previous year at 711.
Hey, can you repeat what the mill rate, by that was at 711, is that what I heard?
Yes,
For this,
Okay, thanks.
this is the project.
projected mill rate for 25-26, yep.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Sorry, one more question. What did you say, what's the state?
Go ahead.
State average?
State average for last year was $7.09.
Okay, thank you.
Just to confirm, you said the mill rate was about the same as last year or a little less?
No, so the projected mill rate for 25-26 would bump up from 670 to 711.
Okay.
But if we go back previous years, it would, so we went back to the 23-24, it would be even less than that. And for the last over a decade, it's been steadily decreasing. So this would bump it up a little bit, but not even as much as it was 2 years ago.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
I have another question. On the audited form or column under 2023-24, that federal number is $466,682.23. And then in the unaudited 24-25, it's a lot lower, 170, and then projected for 25-26, it's only 152. So is that 466,000, is that still ESSER funding, or was that COVID dollars?
That'd be my assumption.
Okay.
Yeah, there were a
That's a
lot
big
of,
help.
yeah, you're right. There's a lot of extra federal dollars and a lot of districts use that. We were one of them that used that to get by. That didn't go into a lot of extra stuff. That went into offsetting other expenses that we would typically have in any fiscal year.
Are there any programs or things that we still currently are doing that we had that funding for?
I don't know.
Okay.
Honestly, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if we, like, so you're saying, like, did we implement something back
Yeah.
then and we're still doing that
Exactly.
even though there aren't federal dollars covering it? I'm not sure, but we can look into that.
I would like that, thank
Mhm.
you.
Really, the only things I can think of off the top of my head would be the extra expenses that we had for masks and sanitizer and, you know, the extra cleaning that we did, that kind of thing. But I can't think of any, you know, like staff member or program in particular that we began.
How about anything to do with, and this is a big topic, but mental health? Are there any positions?
We still have 2 counselors at every building.
And that's what we had before.
Yeah, we've had 2 counselors for quite a few years.
As a matter of fact, I don't remember how many years, there was a time we had 3 counselors at the high school.
Have we, it should have asked before, sorry. Are we still putting the same sources into Fund 80 as we did last year?
Yeah, no,
Yes.
No change? Okay.
Yeah, no change.
Can you explain what the special projects fund is for me?
Explain that to me too.
That's different from capital projects fund. Capital projects, is that the referendum one?
Yes.
So special projects,
21, 23, and 29. Isn't 21 athletics and
Yeah.
activities?
That's all the activities and donation accounts that we have.
So, and not that we only want to focus there, but the general fund and the levy is really all up above, other than Fund 80 with that additional, you know, because we did start in the last fiscal year levying for Fund 80. A lot of the other stuff is sort of programmatic, it just happens with money in and money out as a way to account for it, but it's not something that goes into the overall levy.
And again, so we talked about this at the annual meeting, but then we don't actually approve the final mill rate until October, right?
Correct.
Correct.
We just discuss it, review it, you get an updated budget,
Mhm.
and we get it in October, and then
But yeah, that's when we
And then we
certify the budget
then
is
we
what
would
you'd be
say,
doing.
then we would set the mill rate at whatever we were
Yes, yeah, you're really setting the levy at that point, because the mill rate can change throughout the year, but the way we budget, it typically comes in lower than what would be projected, that's the history. So, we essentially announce what this budget, with all the assumptions built into it, would result in a mill rate of X. But yeah, that would happen in October.
So then, I know you added the 3% to most things, and so you already added that to staffing increases for the year, then that would be part of that
Yes.
budget? Okay, because I know that's one of the things, where I was just wondering if we did the steps and lanes, or if that's equivalent to that, or?
It would still be less than, would be pretty close to the steps and lanes,
Okay.
but it wouldn't be adding additional percentages to them.
And maybe it's, you know, we've got kind of new people here, maybe it's a look again into that compensation piece that we seem to talk about every year, and I know you brought it up at the last meeting or the meeting before about
Yep.
doing something, so we're not talking about it now.
I think, so, that, and Rod has done that. Rod, this is the best part of this budget, I think, is that 3% is built in. Now, my recommendation is that, so, I've been working with Rod. Rod's done really good work on figuring out what would steps and lanes cost. Because that's a number that we can calculate. It's super complex. Because if you think about all of the staffing, everyone can move. Some people move, some people are capped out. Some people resign or retire, and then we hire new people. So figuring that all out is complex. But Rod got us sort of an estimate. That estimate is close to that surplus of that 240,000. If we would put that into compensation, that would be steps and lanes and 3%, which is exactly what as you said, Bruce, that I've been talking about. We want to have that in the budget as an assumption. It doesn't mean that we've decided that's what the compensation would be necessarily yet. That part we'll need to figure out. But it gives us a budget from which to work and not waiting for leftovers at the end of the year, which has been past practice.
So are you guys gonna come back with some kind of update for this $240,000 difference at the annual meeting, or at that budget, or in October, or, cause like we talked earlier, you know, just don't like going in with a, you know, I know we're levying for the full amount, or
Yep.
for a full revenue limit, but if we don't need to, why would we burden people with that amount of money?
100% agree. Yep, I would rather not go in with a surplus budget. I'd rather go in with a balanced budget. But my recommendation is that we would take that surplus, apply that into the line item that's for compensation, so then we know that we're set both with steps and lanes and a potential inflationary increase.
Okay.
Yes, when we come back in October, those numbers should be adjusted for what we would like to do for staff.
'Cause I mean, I think every year that I've seen this, we've been actually over
Yeah.
budget coming in at this time, and then we kind of get the updates throughout the year that it kind of trickles down, as you can see, then it finishes
Right.
under. So that's why when I saw that we were under, it's just questioning why would we go in for even more if we're already
Yep.
projecting under.
Yep. And I think the way that Rod built this budget puts us in a good position, because we don't, in previous budget cycles, if we did not underspend, there wouldn't have been money to cover the compensation that needed. Like, you were actually asking people not to use their budget. We want a budget in a way that says, this is what we believe it takes to fund your program or your school. So we want you to spend that on our students and the programs for our students. Not that we want them to spend just to spend it. It certainly is great when you end the year and there's a balance that can be moved into fund balance. That's a great place to be, but we don't want to count on that, and this budget would allow us not to count on that. But you're right. I mean, I did some calculations. So we're looking at that 10.1% increase on local sources. That is big. That's what resulted in that increase to the 711 for the mill rate. If we didn't levy for that amount that was the surplus, that'd bring it down to 801, an 8% increase in the local sources. So it'd drop it by about 2% of that increase year over year. If we did that, then we would not have accounted for steps and lanes, so we would have sort of met in the middle where, okay, we've got an inflationary portion built in, but we'll still have to wait till the end to know exactly what's gonna happen with the steps and lanes.
And I think we've had that always built into this preliminary budget.
The steps and lanes, but not
And that's
inflationary.
right, and we've been over, and that's what we're.
Yeah.
We have to talk about it.
Yeah.
Okay. Preliminary, we'll go to final.
So we're, just to be clear, we're looking at, for the 25-26 school year, that everybody gets their steps and lanes and a 3% cost of living increase?
That's what the budget is built on. We still have to go through the process of determining, like, as an example, we've talked about special education paraprofessionals.
Right.
So we might be recommending that that percentage is higher than a different percentage. So 3% overall is what's built into that budget for us to use to strategically put us in the best position for recruiting and
Okay,
retaining.
and we'll have more specifics on that in October or maybe even September.
Yeah.
Yes, and then certainly by October. Yeah.
Okay, you have any other questions?
Just that I'll probably have more questions.
Sure.
as we go forward.
Yep.
I'll email those to you.
Yep, absolutely.
Corey, do you have any other questions?
This office, I'm in, playing music for the other.
Ian, do you have any other questions?
Everything.
Yeah, Corey, I can't hear you if you're trying. Matt, do you have anything else?
You can't hear me? No, I have no other questions. I'd make a motion if nobody else has any.
Okay. Corey, do you have something again? Sorry, you're kind of cutting in and out. And I can't hear you.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I just in general don't feel like, we've had enough time to, really understand it fully, to feel comfortable voting on it, but, I understand the pressure and I understand the closer look. I sort of understand what we're doing in October. I'm just overall feeling like this is not how it's supposed to go. So that's just my input right now. I understand the numbers, it's not great, I really don't like the 10.1%, and, so given that state, I really want to understand what we're doing, to make the best of an unideal situation, and we just don't have the time to dive into it right now, it seems.
Yep, and Corey, that's a great point, and there's nothing that would prevent us from, what we're asking you to approve tonight is what we would post in the paper. That would be the starting point at the annual meeting. So that would give us some more time to ask and answer questions between now and then. Having said that, as a board, you could decide, if you want to have a discussion and provide us a different target for that percentage, you could certainly do that, and we could go back to the drawing board and work on whatever that targeted percentage is. That's well within your rights to do.
When would we do that?
You could do
Right
that,
now?
you could do that tonight, certainly. I mean, it's, the recommendation is the recommendation, but it's your decision, your responsibility to provide that guidance for us, so that's fine.
Yeah, I'm very uncomfortable with the 10%.
But that is because the state, I mean, you and I went to Madison and talked with the staff of those representatives and, you know,
And I've emailed.
said how important it is, especially the special education funding. I mean, we end up taking a significant amount of money out of our Fund 10 because the state and federal sources are not covering special education.
Well, yes, and that's certainly a driving factor. I'll share another example because it's one that is confusing and often misunderstood. So if you remember, there was a $325 per pupil increase, but that increase was not in state funding. That was in the revenue limit, and that was all on us. So yes, we can levy $325 more per pupil, but that is 100% on our taxpayers, local taxpayers. So it looks like more state money coming in, but it's not. It just gives us the right to spend more local money.
Right.
So it gets messy.
And the revenue limits are not excessive. I mean, can you explain the percentages about how the revenue I mean, they only increase by a small percentage each year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can you get into any more detail about that?
I couldn't now, I wouldn't know the specifics, I wouldn't wanna misspeak, but the main thing was when it was decoupled from inflation,
Yeah.
that obviously we know what's been happening with inflation, that hurts. You know, everything we do, from the big ones, hiring, paying for staff, certainly is a big one, but everything from paper, from our contract with our printer company to everything costs more than it did previous years. So it's tough when you have a zero increase, that you're not keeping things flat, you're actually moving backwards in terms of your ability to fund the schools.
Right.
All right. Steve, do you have anything else?
Yeah, so for taxpayers, the question is, for every $100,000, let's say on my property, how much tax am I paying now for this budget versus last year or the year before for every 100,000? So that's kind of an easy way to wrap your arms around it, because I think our tax base is gonna grow a little bit. We're a growing district as far as our population and property values go. So that in my head, when I'm trying to put my arms around this, try to wrap my arms around us, that's what I'm looking at. I know there's more dollars involved, but when it gets right down to it, how much more are we paying for each $100,000? So I think that's what the mill rate is, and we just have to understand that.
Is that $40 per 100,000?
Yeah, it'd be the 43, yeah, right,
So-
43.
So from last year to this year, Steve, it'd be $43 per 100,000 higher. And then from the 23-24 year, it would be actually less.
Yes,
We'd actually be lower than we were in 23-24.
yes.
So we're going up from last year and even or a little under 23-24.
Yeah. And one thing, because when people get their tax bill, it varies greatly, because that equalization takes all of the municipalities we serve, and every one is gonna be taxed a little bit differently, so that is as close to an estimate as we could provide.
Yeah, but I mean, I like that explanation and just understanding that, we're actually less than it was 2 years ago. Even though we're talking about more money involved in the budget, so.
Mhm.
All right, everyone's kind of gone through. Matt, do you have a motion you still want to make?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the preliminary budget as presented on the agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we've had a lot of discussion. Maybe we'll just take a roll call vote for this one. I'll start with you, Lori.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Danny?
Yes, with more questions to come.
I think we all have them.
Yep.
Corey?
Yes, as long as we have another special meeting on this prior to the October meeting.
Okay. We'll probably talk about it a bunch of times. I mean, Matt and maybe Dan can work through that one, but I think we'll talk about it many times before we final.
If he needs a special session.
A special session or just on the agenda, Corey, on the future agendas?
On future agendas, yes.
Okay, yep, for sure.
Yeah, because this is
Matt?
our last meeting before the
Yep.
budget hearing and annual meeting.
Matt?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Ian?
Yes.
All right, motion passes 7-0. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for doing all that.
Thank you very much, appreciate it. And for questions too, yep, send them our way. If you could send them both to Rod and to me. And what we'll do, anyone that has a question, we'll do our best to answer it, and then we'll send it out to everyone. That way we don't have to worry about a walking quorum. We'll just be sending that out to everyone. So if any one of you has a question, everyone will know what the question was and what our answer is. And also, if you want to come on in and chat too, we could do that. We could sit down and go through it, because sometimes one question leads to another. We're totally open to sitting down and talking through any of that.
And again, this isn't final until October, so we have
Correct.
2 months pretty much
Yes.
to work through all this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then I'll take a motion to approve item 4, the consent agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Alright, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Alright, motion passes 7-0. Ian is on now. Alright, with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Lori,
Second.
and Danielle second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Alright. Sounds good, motion adjourn, or meeting adjourned at 5:03. Thanks everybody.
Thanks everyone for being flexible, really appreciate it.
Thank you. You bet. See you guys.